not every state does it the same way with respect to a primary election. Here in Utah, we have a caucus convention system. We have closed partisan primaries. But let's give our listeners kind of a broader understanding of there actually are quite a few different ways to do this. What have you seen around the country? How do different states conduct their primary elections in different ways? Can you give us just a quick rundown on that?
Sure, and maybe framing this in the context of maybe the most closed and restrictive system to the most open system can kind of help as listeners work their way through this. States like Utah, and there's only a handful of them that use kind of this caucus convention style, might be in some ways the most restrictive because folks need to show up to a very specific place in order to participate in that primary election. You need to be registered with the party and an active member of the party and satisfy another set of requirements there. Those have perhaps the lowest turnout because very literally just fewer people are permitted to engage in the process. Slightly more open in a traditional primary system. I think how most Americans have thought of primaries, you have each party operating a primary election where they decide which of their candidates moves forward to the general. In 10 states, those primaries are closed. They're only open to registered party voters. They're not open to independents. They're not open to members of other parties. This style is the traditional system in America, but it's now a minority system. Only 10 states have a very rigorous closed partisan primary. Another 9 states, not including Utah, which I think has some unique factors for Utah, as I mentioned, with the caucus and convention system too. But 9 states allow parties to decide themselves whether to allow independent voters to participate. These are known as partially closed. I think of a state like Idaho, where I believe the Republicans traditionally have said only Republicans can participate in our primary, but the Democrats opened their party primary system to independent voters based on the party's decision. 4 states are also closed in some ways, but they do allow crossover voting. So they'll allow independents to vote and they'll allow members of other parties to participate in the primary. But in doing so, voting in that primary counts as re-registering as a member of that new party. So it's not a completely no strings attached way to participate in the primary. 7 states allow independents to choose which primary they want to participate in, and it does not re-register them in doing so, but they don't allow crossover voting. This is a state like where I live in North Carolina, where if I were an independent voter, can go to the polling place on a primary day and tell the folks at the check-in table which of the ballots I'd like to vote that day, and I could remain an independent going forward. Finally, 15 states use what's known as an open primary, where it's open to everyone. Doesn't matter whether you're a member of any registered party or an independent, you can participate, but it is still a partisan primary. It's still picking which Republican or which Democrat moves on forward, and voters have to pick, do they want to vote the Republican ballot, the Democratic ballot, the Libertarian ballot, etc. The most kind of newest and exploratory form of primaries, there's 5 states that use a nonpartisan primary, and they're a bit unique as you move across the country. 2 of them, California and Washington, have a top 2 system where all candidates, regardless of party, show up on the ballot. Voters can pick from among them as they go, and the top 2 candidates, regardless of party, in each race advance to the general election where they square off head to head. Alaska does something somewhat similar, except instead of top 2, they've got 4 candidates who move forward to the general election, and there voters use ranked choice voting in the general to pick from among them. And a couple of states have unique systems, Louisiana and Nebraska. Nebraska's is technically a nonpartisan system, and since it's nonpartisan, you can't have a party primary, so instead they use that. And Louisiana has perhaps one of the most unique forms where their general election in November is actually a primary. And if no one candidate achieves 50%, then they have a runoff following up after that soon after. So they don't necessarily engage with primaries the way the rest of America does months in advance of the November election.